Modena, good morning. Welcome to Newstalk ZB. I'm Jack Tame with you through to midday today. And my guest this morning, live in studio, is a bona fide legend of the New Zealand visual arts scene. Dick Frizzell is, of course, known for his Kiwiana icons, think the Foursquare Man with Moko, Mickey Tatiki, but has worked across so many mediums and is about to release a fantastic new memoir. The book is called Hastings, A Boy's Own Adventure, and it's a collection of stories that Dick has written about life growing up on the East Coast in the 1950s and early 1960s. Dick's here with us this morning. Kia ora, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, I just love the concept. I've just said this to you off microphone. I love how you've gone about writing this. You've really illustrated a kind of vivid, a vivid picture of your childhood, and I'm really delighted in the way you've gone about this.
Oh, thank you.
But tell us about how your family ended up in Hastings in the first place, because you were actually born in Auckland, right?
I was born in Auckland, out at Mount Albert, at a little nursing home that's still there, funnily enough, and. But when my father was in the Merchant Navy, an engineer in the Merchant Navy, and the deal was that he come ashore when I was born. So he came ashore and got a job on the dredge in the Auckland. But as I said in the book, I think the dredge was a bit of an anticlimax after the convoys in the Pacific. And his sisters back in Hastings, which is sort of the family seat, if you like. Right. Sounds a bit grand. They offered him this really cheap loan if you'd go back to Hastings, back to where all the other Frizzells were. And Dad, who was a bit strangely unambitious, thought, and he just kind of just did it. With that. So we left our lovely little sunny flat in Picton Street and went to this dim little cottage in the shadow of Timona Freezing Works.
which is, I mean, you moved around a little bit, but that's where you spent your childhood, and you kind of, I mean, The Boy's Own is totally such a good description, because really this is a collection of adventures that you had as a little boy.
Yeah, that's
right?
how I didn't set out to write a memoir as such. You know, then I did this and then I did that and then I went on here, and I wrote that thing about me writing a short story for a short story competition on national radio, and then I couldn't submit it. I think I got it wrong. It said I thought it said if you were a published author you couldn't submit, but I think it actually said if the story had been published you couldn't submit it. And I got it wrong as usual, which is the story of my life. My great guiding principle: just get everything wrong, and then it'll be better than ever. Yeah. I didn't submit it, but it got me going. Yeah, right. It got me thinking about how the memory works, and I just thought, all those stories, why don't I just write them down? Because I can write, writing. I taught myself to write with that diary, journal and things, and once I started, I just couldn't get over the phenomena of recall, fake or otherwise, you know what I mean? Yeah. It just poured out of the pen, because I write with a pencil, because I can write longhand quicker than I can type. Right. And then if I write into those Moleskine notebooks, and that became a thing, the romantic idea of the Moleskine notebooks and everything else. And of course you can carry it with you wherever you carry. There's your pen and your pencil and your pad. You can write on the moon, Yeah, of course. Yeah. That story you're referencing is one of 30 that's in the book, and that's called Fish in the Barrel. Yes, and shooting fish in the barrel. Yes, it's the story of you and a couple of mates who, as kids, decided that you'd have a go at literally shooting a fish in a barrel, right? Yeah. How did that go down? Well, it was a disaster. It should be called shooting fish in a half barrel, shouldn't it, really? Yeah. Standing over a half barrel with a 303 rifle. Yeah. Yeah, that was funny. That story was a collection of incidents that I kind of wove together. It wasn't sort of quite as straight out as it sounds in the book, but it kind of more or less was. Because this is the funny thing, isn't it? I mean, it is a few decades since the 50s and early 60s, and I mean these are beautifully collected stories, but I struggle to remember things from a couple of weeks ago clearly, and so I suppose this has been kind of an interesting experience in that perspective. Well, yes, I mean, people have often, in my family, whatever, have commented about my memory as if I'm just making it up all the time. There he goes again, you know,
Yeah.
like the silly old uncle. And then I thought, well, maybe I have got an interesting memory. And because I assumed everyone remembers things like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's something to do with my visual memory too. Being an artist, I do remember things like a movie or like a painting.
Yeah, right.
Like a tableau. I haven't used that word before. That's like every story is an assemblage of tableaus. If you read them, you can see those boys standing around the barrel while that kid climbs up on top of it. You know, and you can just see them, can't you? Even though I'm one of them.
Yeah.
You know, but I was I'm there, but I'm actually standing back watching as well.
Yeah.
Like a time traveller. That's the trick.
Like staring down on it.
Yeah. No, just standing back under the carpers watching, thinking, oh, God, you know, get out of the way, guys.
I hope we're not giving too much away to say that the fish survived. It's lucky the boys did too.
Only one of them survived.
Yes.
That one I tried to keep it alive with snacks, biscuits, and I think the salt might have killed.
Got him in the end, yeah. How, as someone who we associate so strongly with visual art, how do you find storytelling and writing for the eye? How do you find that as a different creative pursuit?
Well, the only difference is the mobility the astonishing mobility of it. You don't need all the paraphernalia of the paints and the easels and the space and the God knows what. And it's the kind of transparency is the trick. That's what I think my paintings that's what they're about. There's no sort of conceptual skullduggery or whatever you want to call it. It's just like the thing, just laid out.
Yeah.
Like the landscapes, just completely laid out. There's there's conceptual ideas involved in there about construction and whatever, but it's the same with the writing. But if you, it's about openness, really, like leaving yourself wide open and just risking some sort of integrity to leak through. I mean, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's the same spirit, if you like, yeah.
So I'm just going to give our listeners a bit of a kind of flavour of some of the stories that are in there. So as well as shooting fish in the barrel, there are stories about kind of foundational things in your childhood. I love the story about when you went to hospital after an appendix issue and the different characters who were turning up and not because you got put in an adult ward as opposed to in the kids ward, right?
Well, this is the magic thing, how things happen.
Yeah,
you know, like these things that happen to you like that. I mean, that was magic. And then I became this sort of mascot figure in the ward, you know. Yeah.
And the nurses were preparing for a ball.
Oh, isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah.
I honestly, I got goosebumps when I wrote that.
Yeah. So there's that. It's funny because my dad is of a very similar generation, same generation, and he. When we asked him about his childhood, I remember he would always tell us about the time that he broke his femur and spent a couple of months in hospital and traction. Okay. And it's funny how, just reading your story reminded me of that and how, going to hospital as a little boy is like a really kind of exciting and quite affecting experience. Learning to drive, of course, in an Austin Sherborne. Yeah,
we never called it a Sherborne. We didn't know it was a Sherborne.
No, of course, you just called it the Austin, right?
Just the Austin,
yeah. But it sort of it does kind of throw back to what feels like a more innocent time.
Well, it was innocent because there are so many. I mean, the media was limited in its access to anything. I mean, we used to see newsreels at the cinema. That was about it, really.
Yeah.
With all those soldiers marching along in black and white,
Yeah.
And it was all over there and it's kind of vague. You never got updates on the war or anything, Well,
because you were born in 43, right? So I suppose Korea was still, was maybe underway when you were old enough to remember it. But
well, I don't think most of the time we didn't know which war we were watching. They're all the same. Yeah. They're all troops on ships and stuff,
Yeah.
And it was a very abstract commodity, and there was no. Yeah, I mean, the whole book was written in a time when there was only you wrote letters. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
course.
Communication was so abstract. you know.
That was one point that struck out to me. It's the little details that you've recorded that make this so special.
Well, it's definitely about detail.
Oh no, there's one where you talk about your mum, because you're one of 6 kids, right?
Yeah.
You talk about your mum writing letters to you for years to come. Once you'd left Hastings and you'd spread your wings and you're all in different parts of the country or the world, and your mum would send you all, I think, 5 pages,
yes,
in like a carbon copy, and then she would have 1 page original for each child.
Yeah.
I mean, that's delightful. Yeah,
it is delightful. It's so lovely. The funny old mum, you know, and of course she just wrote or anything about having a cup of tea with a lady next door or whatever. And I actually, I was such a little prick really, the varsity, and I wrote to Mum and I said, look, just why don't you wait till you've got something to say?
Yeah.
What a cruel thing to say. I didn't realise it was just phatic communion, you know.
Yeah,
I didn't know what that was.
So you're listening to Jack Tame on Newstalk ZB, speaking with Dick Frizzell about his book Hastings, A Boy's Own Adventure. It's a memoir of sorts, a collection of short stories from his childhood, growing up in Hawke's Bay. Do you reflect fondly on your childhood, like on that innocent time?
Oh, very, very much. I had it all to myself. I mean, really, I was the firstborn boy prince with his own room. And like those my Donald Duck comics, my sisters weren't allowed to read them till I'd read them. Yeah. Because I used to like, every time you open a page, you get all that fresh ink smell and stuff. And if they read them first, all those molecules would have escaped, you see.
Yeah. You said that, so you moved to Hastings because your dad got a good deal on a mortgage and he had a good job there. But he was an engineer, right? So he wasn't artistically minded. He was very kind of utilitarian minded.
Utilitarian. He couldn't understand the point of art. Because in his mind, everything could be solved with engineering. Yeah. You didn't need art. He was totally bewildered by the idea. Where did it fit? And yet he read a lot. He liked his novels, Raphael, Sabatini and all that sort of stuff. And he got me onto reading. But he didn't equate literature with art. Art was just this wanky rubbish over here, you know, funny, really weird. And he was terrified. Because he'd been in the Navy, he seemed to have a really interesting idea about gay, well, it wasn't called gay then, you know, queers and things.
Yeah, right.
It's funny saying words like that out loud, but he would always say strange elliptical things like to me, like, just stay away from the bosun, Richard. And I go, bosun, what's that? And then I had a favourite comic that he bought me when I was 6 months called Chocolate and the Bosun, which was a little black kid with, you know, stereotype looking big round eyes and everything. And I used to think, what's this bosun? He was a bosun. Yeah. Oh, it's so complicated, I can't tell you, Jack. And so if I did anything like sigh deeply or whatever, like, Dad would panic and think I was going gay. It was
a different time. Yeah,
it was a different time.
It was a different time.
Yes, it's weird. It's amazing how far we've come.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So I mean, I imagine that a lot of the time when people write memoirs, they do it to kind of, you know, in their own mind and in their readers, distinguish between nature and nurture and all that kind of thing, and see the different events and people that help shape them become who they become. Do you feel like that was part of this process as well?
I honestly, like I wrote in the foreword or the introduction, that you can do that. You can set out to try and understand yourself, or you can just write stories about yourself. And as I said, I think the former just leaks into the latter if you're just open. If you just let it go, your personality is quickly going to be exposed, you know, as who you are and how you came to be. And this kind of slightly dopey observer, because I never seemed to initiate anything. I was never like that.
I mean, I would, a willing participant a lot of the time.
Well, all these adventurous layabouts from Havelock North and that would be, they would say, let's go and play snooker. And next thing you know, you're up in the snooker hall, and I would never have dreamt of doing that. Let's go up here and let's do this. And they'd say, let's drive up to the top of the Tomato Peak in your mum's car. I'd think, oh God. And I could never say no. Yeah. So it was But the thing I had to myself was the art, you see.
Yeah.
That was my world, and they weren't in it at all.
Yeah.
So the rest of it, I just went along with it, and that's kind of how the book happened, really.
Yeah. It's a real delight, Dick. It really is. Hastings, A Boy's Own Adventure is the new memoir by Dick Frizzell, a collection of wonderful stories about life growing up in Hastings in the 50s and early 60s. Thank you so much for being here.
It was a pleasure. That was good.
No, it really was. We'll make sure all of the details for Dick's book are up and available on the Newstalk ZB website.